Alright, so this is my second Fromm Reflection, and the assignment was to take like a sentence and expand on it. Um, Tyler Edwards created a Fromm video earlier that dealt with a passage from Erich Fromm's Man for Himself, and it was under the section Fear of Dying-Affirmation of Living. And there was one particular quote that resonated with me, and I typed it up originally because I don't know. For me, this idea is it's very personal, um, but I'm gonna put it out there because I think it's an interesting concept, and I think at some point in time everybody thinks about it. So here we go. Here's the quote: "The fear, then, is not of dying, but losing what I have. The fear of losing my body, my ego, my possessions, and my identity. The fear of facing the abyss of non-identity, of being lost." And as I just said, I think we all fear at some point death, or we all think about it. We may not fear it until we're older. But in the past year and a half or so, I've gone through the process of losing three of my grandparents, two of which I was really, really close to. And I can see how, or at least through them, I saw that there wasn't really a fear of death itself. I think in to a certain extent, dying was kind of a relief. But what I saw from them was a true fear of losing some of the things they had. Um, for my grandmother, it was the relationships with her grandchildren and her children. Um, for one of my grandfathers, it was losing the the business he had built up, losing his physical strength, um, losing a lot of things that made him independent. And for my other grandfather, I think it was very similar to his wife. And it was just, I think after losing her, so losing a very close person that you share a lot with, and then grandchildren and children. And it's interesting how I think it varies from person to person. But Fromm hits this. It's definitely not necessarily the fear of dying. I think we do fear death because we wonder, what's going to come after. Oh, I think we know the world's going to keep spinning, but the world will just keep progressing, but we won't be in it. Um, but this idea that we're going to lose ourselves, that we lose possessions, I think we're in such a materialistic culture that people truly fear, losing their iPod, their phone, and their computer. I think those are kind of ridiculous examples, but you can see it every day. And then, personally for me, it's not, I can do without the material, but I think the connections that I've made, the friends that are really close to me, I think to a certain extent I do fear losing that. But our fear of death does not come, I don't think, from the act of dying. And I think everyone, maybe, not out loud, but acknowledges that life and death are a reality. Even though we seem to try to beat it every day. We know it's a reality, and I think that's why we try so hard to beat it. And I think it's a very interesting concept because we're so afraid of losing everything that we've built up or that we've become accustomed to. And that's the point Fromm is making. But there's a question I have with this is, how do we reconcile with this idea that yes, we're going to die? How do we, part with material, our relationships, our possessions, our identity? And I think a lot of it comes from people being in just the being mode. I think we can reconcile this idea of, losing our possessions, losing relationships, because when we live life in the having mode, as Fromm calls it, living passively, not, in the moment, we let some things just kind of go. Therefore, we have this time to kind of think about, what I could be doing or who I could be talking to. And we're not engaging in life. We're not taking the advantages life has to offer. Therefore, but if we're living in the being mode, if we're involved in life, if we put ourselves in that all the time, we don't have time to think about death. We don't necessarily, have to dwell on it. And I think that's the biggest key to it, is if we don't dwell on the fact that we're going to lose basically everything. I think but when, that hour comes that it's time for us to go, I think the idea that we can look back and say, I did everything that I wanted every day. Therefore, my life there was something fulfilling about it. It was there. And I think that if we can get to that point, there won't be as much of a fear of losing, because we will have everything, or we would have obtained everything that we could want. And after starting this class and thinking about this quote, I've made myself this promise that and I want to be able to say at the end of every day when I go to sleep, I could die now and be content with what I've done in life, or just today. And just by saying that, and being able to say that and be completely confident about that, I think that by the time that it comes for me to go, I will be happy, and I will have reconciled this idea that, yes, I may be losing everything, but I gained everything to my potential that I could have achieved in my lifetime. Alright, so those were kind of my ideas, and I'll be interested to see if anybody has any feedback. Thanks.